Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts, support your mental health, and learn the tips and tricks that thousands of parents have used to craft their ideal birth. We will answer all of your questions, the scary ones and the weird ones, to help calm your fears and feel confident going into your birth. I'm going to help you redefine what birth and motherhood looks like and how to embrace your journey. I've intentionally crafted a list of experts to help you navigate pregnancy, explore your birth options, and plan for postpartum so that it can be a time of soaking in your tiny human. We're going to go there on all the hard topics so that you can dive deep into finding your confidence and freeing yourself from fears around birth. With over 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I created this podcast as a way to share the resources parents need to make educated and informed decisions about their care in pregnancy and childbirth. This is a birth community driven by evidence-based information and research in hopes to help you explore your options, understand your rights, and know what choices you have along the way when it comes to birth and beyond. I'm your host, HeHe. Now let's get to the good stuff. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you here. I think so many people are listening with perked up ears. And I know a lot of people are coming to this conversation with a lot of skepticism of not only the topic, but also who you are and what your motives are. And first things first, are you anti-vax?
I love this question. I actually started one of the chapters in my book with this question. And if you're listening and you have nausea in your stomach or you're just like waiting on the precipice of what I'm about to say, I am going to fail you. I actually don't believe in the terms anti-vax or pro-vax because I feel like those are very subjective terms. And I feel like being an anti-vaxxer is different for every single person. What I do say is I'm pro-informed consent. So my intention in all of this is that you go into a medical decision informed. Whether you accept, you delay, or decline, it doesn't matter to me if you accept it or if maybe you want to research more on your condition or research more on different alternative or complementary medicines while you also accept the pharmaceutical, totally fine by me. Or if you want to decline it and you want to research other alternatives, that is what my goal is. I'm not anti-vax. I'm not pro-vax. I am pro-informed consent.
Oh my gosh, you see me like squirming because you jazzed me up. That makes me so happy. And for me, two things come to mind. That should be the standard. That should be what is like normal, what everyone just accepts as
Mm-hmm.
care. But the reality is that's so hard to find, actually.
Yes. And when I first started researching pharmaceuticals, I was very turned off by this conversation.
Mm,
And I didn't even want to research because there were two camps and they were very polarizing and they both had logical fallacies in their arguments. The one side said, if you accept this product, you'll die. The other side said, if you don't accept this product, you'll die. And it just seemed very fear based. And there wasn't a lot of leniency in the decisions or the ability to cater it to your personal situation. And it was just very hard. And like you had to go one way or another. So I made my own path. And thankfully, more and more people like you, he, and other people that I've seen just message me daily are starting to realize that you can have your own personal medical decision and you can have authority over that because you're ultimately responsible for it.
yeah. Do you believe that you can do that with any provider, or do you believe that someone has to find the right provider?
There are certain providers that will stick to a certain methodology. And that to me is the same if you go to a pediatrician, it's the same if you go to a naturopath, a chiropractor. They're all going to have their silos of how they have come to find certain solutions to certain medical problems. Personally, I've found that family doctors can be a little bit more open to different avenues, whether it's pharmaceutical or alternative. I do think that tide is turning the more that people are vocal and have an open and respectful conversation, just like we're having right now. I have pediatricians that message me that say, I reference all of my patients to you. And so I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that all pediatricians are going to be one way or all naturopaths are going to be one way, because there are quite a few naturopaths that are very adamant about using certain pharmaceuticals. I don't think it can be all or nothing. And then also I will caveat with that with if you are in a city or in the country, you might have a different experience. I found that the cities can be quite economical and that you have to follow a certain method of care because there is no ability to go outside that. But some of the places in the country, or if you have smaller pediatrician's office or smaller just family doctor offices, you can have a little bit more customization. It just depends.
Yeah. There's many layers to how broken our system is, and it's very disjointed, right? So there's
Mm.
not a lot of consistency in our system as we currently have it, and I think that's a goal of probably everyone who works in healthcare or even what I like to call healthcare adjacent is everyone recognizes that we have a very disjointed system and we all kind of aim to fix that. I think the a large difference between people is their approach. And it reminds me a lot of picking your OBGYN. So something that you and I agree on is that the idea of like unbiased doesn't actually exist. People can't be unbiased, just like human to have biases. It really is finding a care provider, whether they are an OBGYN or a pediatrician or a naturopath or a chiropractor or whatever, even your acupuncturist, any sort of coaches you hire, we should all have you should be comfortable with their biases. You should have similarities in the way that you believe in philosophy and approaches and boundaries. So for an OBGYN, it is a lot of what's your definition of due date and spontaneous labor and need for induction. And with the pediatrician, it's I don't know, what would you say? You deal a lot with pediatricians. What would you say?
I say the pediatricians that are bound to the CDC schedule or they have a strong allegiance to certain professional organizations, they are not going to be open to a conversation. And that's where you see a lot of medical bullying and medical coercion, a lot of pediatricians getting emotional about your medical decision. And I get a little fiery about that topic. And I sense you get fiery about that too,
Yeah.
because I've been there. I've been sitting in that seat and that's happened to me before. So
Mhm.
I know how that feels and I try to empower people in that situation. But then there's the pediatricians that I get messages of we don't enforce the CDC schedule. We make sure that we have like hour-long visits for our patients. So I do appreciate those pediatricians and it gives me hope and it makes me realize that we can fix a little bit of our model of healthcare and it makes me a little bit more critical of the pediatricians that don't allow that because it's like there are pediatricians that are doing it why can't you provide care to this patient what's holding you back. And that's where I had to bring in the CDC Foundation and incentive programs and how my background's in business. And so I pieced together, okay, there's other external influences here that we really need to be aware of as a patient. So when we walk into that sales funnel, because that's what it is, when you walk into it, just for you to be mindful of it and to not take it personal, that when you walk in there and you have a certain situation, it's not you, it's the system, it's everything, all the external forces that are being pushed into that one decision of you accepting this product. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. What other external factors did you find? You mentioned a little bit of it. It's a sales funnel. So there's pressure from admin of the hospital or the employer. There must be big pharma swaying some decisions. What else did you find?
There's government funded programs that subsidize certain products. And so they buy up a whole bunch of vaccines, whatever it is. It's not just vaccines, it's a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals, whatever they decide to focus on for that year. So they'll buy up a whole bunch of them and then they offer it to pediatricians or they offer it to offices in a government subsidized program. So you have that and that a lot in cities and that a lot targeted for like Spanish speaking populations. The CDC Foundation actually funds a lot of marketing programs for that population. That's why I made the training course option, the audio option in Spanish, because I want to do more and it's on my plate to do more. I just need to hire a translator and get someone else to help me with that. But so you have those as well. You have, like I said, the professional organizations where medical provider is a part of that professional organization. And so they get pressure from that standpoint. Insurance companies is a big one. So they're, in order for you to take this insurance, there's certain things that you have to check off the box. So I actually feel bad for some of them because they've spent a larger part of their adult life coming to this moment, this is the pinnacle of their education and all of their expertise, and then to be stuck and pigeonholed is, it's got to be hard. It's got to, and for it to be, especially if you're the breadwinner, now you're deciding, okay, am I going to go against the stream and then potentially not be able to provide food for my family or roof over my head? And it's hard. I try to see all sides and I try to have an open mind for all of it. And you're right, it's broken. 100% it's broken. And I don't know exactly what the answer is, but the thing that I can focus on is just informed consent. And little by little, I think if we focus on that as a culture, that it will fall into place eventually.
Eventually, yeah. I love that there are patients that are waking up to, and there are healthcare providers that are waking up to this. And I think the more people on both sides of that, the better. The power is actually in numbers. Okay, so navigating the system, you talked about it as a sales funnel, and then you just mentioned informed consent. Talk to us about what informed consent is and how it actually impacts that sales funnel.
Absolutely. So a basic example, you go to your doctor, they prescribe a medical product. First they should diagnose you first. Not all the time do they tell you what your diagnosis is. So that should be the first
Wow.
question. Is It's happened to me when I was in the military. I would go to a doctor and they would pull out prescription pad. They didn't even tell me what it was until I look at my medical records later on. Oh, that happens all the time. So the first question would be, what is my diagnosis? The second question would be, okay, what is this medical product? Write down the trade name, write down the generic name, make sure you have correct spelling, and make sure that the doctor confirms that spelling. So then you can go get the insert yourself. In the appointment, though, they get prescribed this product. Your question should be, there's actually a few questions that I wrote a chapter about it, but the main one should be, what benefit is this going to provide me? How is this going? What are the biological events that occur in my body that will help me with my diagnosis? And they can go in depth or however they are willing. If they've read the insert, I would hope that they would be giving you the informed consent you need. But also the conversation should be, what am I at risk for? Not just at risk generally, like the general population, what am I personally at risk for? So that goes into your health history, that goes into other medications that you're taking, it goes into the treatment plan that the doctor is created for you. Is this acute care? Is this chronic care? Short or long term? You need to know all of that when you go to read a manufacturer insert, because there are certain things in the insert that apply to you, different types of care with that medical product. So basically having a conversation really is going back and forth, not just one question. It's a volley, it's a tango of sorts, and communication is key here. So that's where we want to see the open conversation. We don't want to have the snarky comments from the medical provider. We don't want to see rushing you out the door. We want to have relaxed, open conversation. And then you either accept that prescription or you go home and you do some more research, or you read the insert. And you can read an insert while you're sitting at the pharmacy. Normally you don't get the product right then and there unless it's an injection, but you have some time to read it. And then if you have follow-up questions, don't be afraid to stop, call the doctor and ask your questions. You have the ability to do that. Or if you really have a question about something, like a great example is if a drug interaction is listed and you didn't talk about it with your doctor, feel free to call them and say, hey, we didn't talk about this in our appointment. I noticed this on the insert. Can you just explain this to me? I don't know how many messages I've received of patients doing that and their doctor saying, oh, no, we don't want to do that. And then they prescribe something else. So that's definitely a big reason to read the insert. And then just being mindful of, if you do accept that product, being mindful to any adverse reactions because you've read the insert, what are commonly associated with that medical product, so you can be aware to eliminate diagnostic confusion. And then if a reaction does occur, that you can expedite treatment. So that's the main part of the accepting. I always say that you can accept, delay, or decline. And then delay, you can look at other options. If you decline, you can look at other options as well. So that's the informed consent process. I know that's a lot, and I try to paint a little bit of a picture because I know it's easier. It's so easy to say informed consent is you being informed about all medical decisions. Like, okay, what does that mean? So that helps maybe a little bit for anyone listening of what does informed consent look like and how to enforce it in your patient-provider relationship.
Yeah, no, I've said it before, is that I think a lot of people believe they're getting informed consent when really they are not. And it's not even close to it. There are so many things being left out of the conversation, from the power dynamic to the actual words being spoken and the risks that are being disclosed and the benefits that might be even being over or under
Mhm.
acted or presented in a way that maybe favors or doesn't favor different decisions. And that is not informed consent. And that's what I think a lot of people get, or in my experience as a doula and being in prenatal appointments with OBGYNs and midwives and family practitioners and nurse practitioners. And then in the birth space, being in the postpartum space with lactation professionals and acupuncturists and chiropractors. There are so many discussions in all of healthcare that could be done a little bit better. Okay, you said one thing that really piqued my interest, and I cannot gloss over it.
Mhm.
How many doctors are actually reading the inserts?
I would say more now that we're calling them out.
Nice.
But at the very beginning of this, so this is my fourth year, I started Just the Inserts about 4 years ago. I would say 0% of the people that messaged me said, this is the first time I've read an insert. Nurses, doctors, almost all of them said that. And then I started, pharmaceutical reps follow me as well. And so a few of them messaged me and they said, doctors do read inserts, but it's only certain parts of inserts. And it's only when a pharmaceutical rep presents them with a section of the insert to compare against a competitor. So that's not really reading what the intent of is the insert. And for those that are listening that don't know what an insert is, basically it's just the labeling of a product. If you get an espresso machine or you get like a hair dryer or something, there's that little pamphlet that comes with it. It gives you all the ways to prevent injury to yourself, the product, in your home. That's basically what an insert is for a pharmaceutical product. There's a lot of nuances to it, and there's a lot of structure from the FDA that's required for an insert, and that's something that I focus on, is training you how to read those. When I first started reading inserts, it took me hours, sometimes days, to read an insert because it was so foreign to me. Now I can read an insert in just a few minutes because I know how it's structured. I know what to look at, what not, what I don't need to know dosage and how to actually inject it or do anything like that. But I do need to know what are the common, or what are the adverse reactions that have been associated with this product? What are some of the special population facts that I need to know for pregnancy, breastfeeding, geriatric, pediatric, things like that? So I would say that now I'm getting more doctors that message me that say, yes, I am starting to read the inserts, but it takes too long. And that's where we go into back of like how it's a broken system, but at least they're seeing them. I would say midway point about 2 years ago, I was getting a lot of messages of medical professionals saying that they never read inserts until they themselves became parents or they themselves had a medical diagnosis. And I've said this plenty of times before, that's a critical flaw in our system. If a medical professional isn't reading an insert until they themselves are personally liable, that's a problem. I am happy though to see a little bit of a shift. I would say post COVID, I think that woke a lot of people up, which is, that's a good thing. I'm happy to see that because I started researching in 2019. So I saw everything beforehand and I saw it now. I saw the atmospheres, and I'm much happier with how it is now. I think more and more people are talking about it, whether they agree with a product or not. At least we're talking about it. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that's all part of the informed choice piece that you and I so deeply believe in, is that the conversation needs to happen. You have choices along the way. Do you participate in that conversation? Do you actually come to it with an open mind? Do you decide to change your view? Does it alter your view but doesn't change it completely? It's almost like the accept, decline, delay.
Mm.
You have that kind of all over. I'm I too am very glad that these conversations are happening. For people who are still a little skeptical, what do you say to people who are thinking, why should I even care about the inserts? I feel like my doctor tells me everything, and also they're obviously approved by the CDC, so they must be safe. Why would I even pick up to read it? Because you mentioned how long it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I didn't really focus on that when I first started just the inserts. I just focused on the inserts. And then I would have really in depth conversations in my comments and my DMs. And I realized that in order to understand a part of all of this, you have to understand the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. So, in order for you to understand that all of the adverse reactions listed in the post marketing section, those are all adverse reactions that have been reported to a passive surveillance system. And those are reactions that are brought in aftermarket that have been reported. And all of those have been acknowledged by the CDC to be causally linked to the product. And so I would get messages of, oh, those are just there because for legal reasons. And then I would go into, okay, what about the National Childhood Vaccination Act of 1986? Manufacturers do not have liability for products. So really it was more of, I started doing posts that when you read an insert, it put you in the right mindset of what is actually happening and the reality of what's happening. And before, if people would read inserts, it was, oh, okay, that's just like legal jargon. And no, that's that the inserts were made to be read. Manufacturers are supposed to, for every prescription product, they start out with an NDA and then it turns into an insert. It's meant to be read by you and me and medical professionals. It's for us. And it's actually in the legislation that they have to provide that for us. And so it is something that it's our onus. We have to have the authority over going and reading it because we're responsible for that. And I really hit home for that too. Informed consent isn't going to mean anything to you if you don't think that you're responsible for your medical decisions, but you are, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we are. And that's where I bring in the responsibility equals authority thing. Even for, let's say you take an aspirin and you're allergic to a part of the aspirin, you're responsible. You're responsible for any adverse reactions. You have to deal with all of that. Same for any kind of vaccines or any kind of pharmaceutical product. So that's where I would say to that is informed consent is very important. And I really hope if you haven't considered that to maybe open your mind to start researching some of the products you do accept, because you might start to find links to certain things that you might not realize, oh, this is affecting me in other areas of my life that I'm having to be financially responsible for. Maybe I can look and see if there's any options because it's going to happen to someone eventually, whether it's to you or to a family member. So it's better for you to have those skills to be able to read an insert whenever you need it and understand what you're reading and understand the industry as a whole. So it makes sense when you're reading it.
Where can people learn how to read inserts?
Oh, I have a great website for you. So I have a free training course. You don't have to provide your email. I don't get any information for you. I do not sell to third-party ads or anything. I don't benefit anything for this because I've been accused of that. I'm like, no, I don't. I really don't. But I have a free training course called How to Read an Insert on my website, justtheinserts.com. It's right at the top, so you can see it right away. It'll probably take about 2 to 3 hours. Most people take 2 to 3 hours. And I hold your hand through every single thing you need to know in order for you to start reading inserts. And I'll just share a quick story. There was this one woman that messaged me, and she, picture of health, never had any issues with the pharmaceutical she accepted. She has never had an adverse reaction, but her husband had some kind of cardiovascular event. They were in the ER and the doctor prescribed a few products. She whipped out her phone because she had taken my course. She whipped out her phone, pulled up the insert, several inserts that were given, and she read through all of them really quickly in the ER. The prescriptions that were recommended to her husband would have killed him. And she explained very in depth of why it would have killed him due to his health history that I won't share here because I haven't received permission to share that. But it would have killed him. And she was able to say, wait, hold on a second. He has X, Y, and Z. This drug interacts with this drug. He has a health history of this. His dad had this. And she was able to save her husband's life because she knew how to read an insert. I'm just chuffed. I'm so happy when I hear things like that because I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. You didn't have an immediate need, but you knew that it was important for you to have this, and you were able to help your family member because you had those skills. Yes, all on the website. I have audio versions. Those are actually done by AI, so it won't be my voice. But I tried my best to find the most natural AI voice I could find. And then there's also Spanish versions in it as well. And yeah, so totally free. That will always be free as long as the website exists. I also have about over 50 pharmaceutical deep dives into different products, over the counter, prescription. I'm starting to do a little bit more on medical devices. Those are all free on the website, just very simple things to look at when you're looking at an insert. And a lot of people will ask me, what does the bolded part mean? It's nothing special. It's really just if I've bolded something, it's because a nurse or a medical professional has told me that there's no way that this reaction could have been caused by this product. And so I'm really just highlighting, yes, it's listed on the insert. The manufacturer is telling us that there is a connection and this is something that we need to research. Or if somebody has mentioned that reaction quite a bit, I will bold it for that. And then I have a new book coming out called Well Considered, Handbook for Making Informed Medical Decisions. That pre-order is open for October, so it should be out for shipping. And that really is the training course on steroids. So it basically takes everything that's in the training course, but it just breaks things down in a more in-depth manner. And it's a little bit more conversational and approachable. And I have screenshots of everything. So for those people that just hate devices, you can have a physical in hand. I don't know how many people have messaged me saying, I hate learning on a computer. I hate learning on my phone. The book is there for you. And just to have it in print form, I really wanted to have that just for longevity's sake to make sure that everything was captured in the book. But I also add in more of a pep talk at the end of the book. And it's really just questions to ask your medical provider, how to find a provider that values informed consent. So if you have had some rough interactions with a medical provider, you're not alone. It happens all the time. And to give you steps and even some scripts of how to find medical providers that do informed consent. So I include some phone scripts that I've used in my personal life that have helped me. And then I talk about the responsibility and authority aspect, because that's so important to understand that you are responsible for your body and you have authority to accept, delay, and decline any or all medical products. There's no question about it, no matter who you are, your educational level, what politics you stand by, none of that matters. You are responsible for your medical decisions, and no one can take that away from you.
So I call that radical responsibility. And I find that a lot of us have had that kind of almost beaten out of us in
Mm.
certain ways. And a lot of what I do is help people find their voice just like you of take back your responsibility and be responsible for the choices that you're making. You have a lot of control on the things that happen to you medically and to your baby and to your children medically. Take that. Take that
Mm-hmm.
back. You can be in
Yeah.
control of these decisions. Oh my gosh, that story that you told about that lady saving her husband's life. Oh, holy cow. Like, truly take my breath away. I think that may be a better answer even to the question of why do I care? Why should I be
Mm.
looking into inserts? Like, because of this, because you have to understand what you're saying yes to. And it doesn't mean that you have to say yes or no. It just means before you say yes or no, know what you're saying yes or no to. Okay, you've mentioned a couple of times manufacturers. They make these inserts, but something that you said previously was that they're actually not held liable for any vaccine injuries. Tell us what we need to know and what we need to understand about that dynamic and how it impacts patient care and also health outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the 1980s, manufacturers weren't doing so well because people were suing them for adverse reactions. So they were able to gain legislative protection for any liability of an adverse reaction as long as they did things like inserts. And then in 1993, there was an amendment to that to where you most likely, if you have accepted a vaccine, you received a paper called a VIS, a Vaccine Information Statement. The 1993 amendment allowed the manufacturer to summarize reactions, generalize reactions, and it really was meant for provider to save provider time. However, because of the way that the CDC is structured, there is a voting board called the ACIP, Advisory Committee. I forgot what the INC are, but I should know. I write about them all the time, but it's called ASIP, and they can decide what inserts are highlighted on the VIS. And I do go into in the training course and on the book that there are concerns of potential financial conflicts of interest. Again, I'm from a business background, so I do focus on that. I also worked in government for a long time, and it's important to know that. It's important to know if there is potentially a conflict of interest in how things are reported. And I'll give a great example, and this is one that I give in the book. For example, if you were to get the vaccine information statement for the DTaP, it'll say it could cause a red swelling, it could cause crying. I forgot the blurb of what it all says, but then it says a little general statement that all vaccines could potentially lead to serious injury or death. However, if you look on the DTaP insert, on the very last page for the post-marketing adverse reactions, sudden infant death syndrome is listed. That's concerning. As a parent, I would want to know if a product that I'm accepting when my baby is 2, 4, and 6 months old has sudden infant death syndrome, also known as SIDS, listed on the insert. Those are the highest rates of SIDS, according to, I believe it's the National Institutes of Health. So that is something that, unfortunately, vaccine manufacturers are not held liable for because they put it on the insert, because they're letting us know this has been reported. There is a link to this, but we told you through the inserts. So that's why I do think that vaccine information statements, I believe you said at the beginning of this, we think that we're getting informed consent when we get that VIS, but we're really not. And it's important for you to know why we're not. And that's why I talk about the ASIP and why I talk about the 1993 amendment. I can't provide an answer to that right now. I really wish it would get fixed. But the answer that we can deal with and meet us where we're at is to go straight to the answer. Reading a VIS is great, but you really should be going to the answer.
Okay, and what other risk did you find in these inserts when you started to go through them? What were you seeing pop up time and time again that you also knew that the healthcare system wasn't truly being really forward and transparent about?
I would say the section 13.1 is pretty concerning. That talks about the cancerous and mutagenic potential effects of certain pharmaceuticals. That doesn't get talked about at all. That's almost like a 1 or 2 sentence blurb that's on all of these inserts. And look at how many rates of cancer we have. And look at how many, I in my own family have 2 family members, actually three family members in the last 5 years that have had cancer, and 2 of them are kids. And so I think with our current levels of cancer, we need to be looking at these products that we continually inject or accept for our children. And that section isn't good enough anymore. We need more studies. We need more clinical studies. We need more research into this. That's one of the big things that I've seen. Another big thing is whenever a product is brought to market, most of the time the pregnant population is not included in that product or in the clinical trials, the first, second, and third phases of the clinical trials. The answer for manufacturers to that is to create a pregnancy registry after the fact. A great example is the new RSC products that have come out. Those adverse reaction sections are not populated because it's so new to the market. And even the CDC and FDA both say, and I have this cited in the book in my training course, that some adverse reactions will not become apparent until it's been administered to millions of people. So I think it's important to understand that if you're accepting a product that's brand new on the market, you are basically an uncontrolled test subject, especially if you're pregnant. So if you do accept that product, please register, do the pregnancy registry, because that's important for other pregnant women to make informed decisions later on. There are typically small clinical trials after the fact, but nothing to the same level of, I would say some of the clinical trials are robust, but some of the products don't even have robust clinical trials either, or the product that's being tested is being tested against another vaccine, which I personally don't think is very clear of a result. So I kind of skip, and I say this in the book, I skip section 6.1, which is the clinical trial adverse reactions, because a lot of them are very subjective. I really focus on 6.2 because of what I said with the FDA and CDC saying that those reactions may only become apparent when millions of people have it, or delayed reactions. Some reactions don't happen until a year later. A great example of that is the synthetic vitamin K injection. It says delayed eczematous reactions can happen up to a year. And that's in the insert. And unfortunately, that hits a little bit home to me because my daughter dealt with that. So Yeah, all important to read. I will say there are parts of the inserts where there isn't a lot of clarity and transparency, and I try to provide sections of .gov websites that say why it's not clear or why it's not transparent, but some of them we just don't know.
What are some of the reasons that they've given for not being very clear?
So for the adverse reaction section, the post-marketing, the FDA has said that they don't provide what is that threshold when an adverse reaction gets added to the post-marketing marketing section. They don't say what metric are they using. There are three reasons why a product might or adverse reaction might hit that threshold, and it's the seriousness of the event, how many reports were given, and I forgot the third one right now, but it was definitely not very clear. And then they say that if there are a number of reports that are given, they have to give the dates of when those were given because it can easily become outdated. So I get asked all the time, what made this adverse reaction get added? I don't know. The FDA doesn't say. I just know that it's on there. And I know that it meant one of these things. I don't know what three of these they meant, but they meant these. So that's why it can be frustrating. And I'll give you a heads up if you do read inserts. Part of them can be very frustrating because they don't give you a lot of information in some sections, but they do in others. So it's still important to read.
Do you think that's intentional?
I would say that for decades, people didn't really, the society as a whole, didn't really look into this because it wasn't so apparent. I can just think about when I was a kid, I don't remember anyone having a peanut allergy. I don't remember anyone when it actually broke my heart the other day. I was at a public park and a huge school bus arrived, and every single child that came out of that school bus had special needs, some kind of special needs, and they had all these admin with them, and it broke my heart because I never remember seeing that as a kid. I don't remember the prevalence of this at all. Or when we had family pictures, I don't remember seeing everyone overweight. There are so many things in our culture and society now. We are unwell as a society and we are not doing well. And so I think many of us are just grasping at what's causing this. And I don't think it's all pharmaceuticals. I think that there are definitely some pharmaceuticals that cause certain things that I think need to be pulled from the market to have more safety studies. But it's not just that. Look at our food, look at and we talked about it before we started. There's so many things that we need to look at: screens, how much outdoor time are we getting, so many different aspects to it. So I think we're all just clamoring, trying to find the answer. And I don't think it's just one answer. I hope by all of us having these conversations, we'll put a little bit more pressure. But I think before, to answer your question, they didn't need to. They didn't need to be transparent because people weren't really asking questions. But now we're asking questions. And so hopefully we'll be able to get some more
I
answers.
love to hear that. Okay, so the people who are reporting these things, where are they reporting them to? The VAERS?
Yes. So if a product or an adverse reaction is reported to VAERS, it has, I believe, a 6-week process where it goes through and it's evaluated of, was this caused by the product or was it caused by some other external factor? Other ways that adverse reactions get added is if a patient or parent reports it straight to the manufacturer. They are required by law to report that to the government. I don't have any insight on how that process works, but they are required by law to report that.
Yeah. You've mentioned the CDC several times and some of the interactions and some of the governance that they have over pediatricians. My question is, what I'm familiar with is ACOG governing OBGYNs, but OBGYNs don't actually have to follow what ACOG guidelines are. It's more of a recommendation. Is that the same relationship between the CDC and pediatricians? Is the CDC schedule more of a recommendation, or are pediatricians bound to it? I guess my real question is, the pediatricians who are honoring parent choice and medical freedom, are they acting against the CDC?
It really depends on the state that you live in. So if your state has outsourced their authority to the CDC, That means that whenever the CDC decides that a product goes on to the CDC recommended schedule, then the pediatrician and everyone in that state has to follow the CDC schedule. Some states will have just certain vaccines written into their law that they have to follow, and then other states, there's nothing like that. So it really just depends on where you live. I know a lot of people, actually, the most people that follow me are in New York and California because those states don't have a lot of parental authority and they have to be a little creative in how they do it. But to answer your question, no, pediatricians don't have to. It's not legal for them, but they do face a lot of backlash and they have to restructure their business model to make sure that they're profitable and that they can keep the lights on, because the CDC definitely rewards pediatricians that follow the schedule.
Are there any additional states that come to your mind in addition to New York and California that parents should be aware of if they live in those states?
I would have said Mississippi, but they just allowed the religious exemption last year. So that just got approved. I believe they went through the judicial route. Let me see.
I grew up in Mississippi.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah,
I
that's
did
my
some
home state.
training. Yeah, I did some training in Biloxi. So I have a little soft spot for Mississippi.
Yeah,
Um,
you can't help but love it.
you can't help but love it. They're just the sweetest people. And it feels like you take a shower and then you walk outside and you're just
Thought
sweat. But yeah, anyway, I'm trying to think of another state. I'm sure there are plenty out there, but maybe New Jersey. I think New Jersey is pretty strict as well. New York and California take the cake for sure.
Yeah. And so if you were to ask a doctor about the insert, can you expect them to bring you that little leaflet, that little booklet? Where are people getting the inserts for the pharmaceuticals that they or their children are getting?
They're all on the FDA website. So you can go and access all. If it's a prescription, there has to be an insert on the FDA website. And I teach you how to do that in the course. It's actually very simple to do. I will say that if you go to a doctor's office and ask for the insert, it's hit or miss if they're going to give it to you. I had this one. I love medical students. They're just awesome. When I first started coming out and like posting stuff, the most heat that I got was from medical students, and now it's flipped. Now they're just awesome, asking so many questions, and like they tell me about the conversations they have with their professors, and it's just so great. But one medical student told me that he was working in a clinic and he asked the head nurse where can he find the inserts that are in the boxes, and she told him that they burn them and that it's illegal to give to the patients. And I was floored when he told me that. I had never heard that before. And so I don't know what ended up happening with him, but I sent him my training and I was like, this is how you can find the answers. Like, how sad is this? It's just a random person on the internet is showing you how to find the inserts when your own head nurse where you're at in a medical facility in medical training won't even show you the inserts.
It feels illegal. So would that be illegal if your provider refused to give you an insert or refused to answer your questions about the risk and benefits and any sort of alternatives?
I can't speak to that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not 100% certain. In my heart, I would say that's illegal, but I don't know. I think it depends on state law. It also depends on your state's informed consent law. And that's one thing that the CDC does say is that the vaccine information statements aren't meant to be informed consent forms, and that providers do have to be proactive to understand what is required in that state. Like for some states, for the VIS, they can have just an iPad at the reception's desk that the patient just like scrolls through. Other states require you have to give a physical paper before the appointment that it happens. So for me, when I was pregnant for my first baby, they gave me the VIS for Tdap, the appointment before I was supposed to get it. And actually, I was grateful for that because it allowed me time to research it. But yeah, it just depends. Unfortunately, it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
It really just is up to your state legislation.
And is that the same case when it comes to laws about vaccines? So if your state has a law requiring a vaccine, are there any rights that parents have in terms of informed consent and truly having the freedom to decline or
Yeah.
delay?
Absolutely. So there is no federal wide sweeping vaccine mandate. And within your states, you should have all of them have a medical exemption. So that is you have to get a letter from your medical doctor or a DO. And then you can have a religious exemption. And that just depends on your state on what that religious form is. But you can find all of these online. All of these are publicly available. NBIC.com has a wonderful, easy to search map of telling you exactly what you need, depending on if you're doing it for education or employment. And then there's also philosophical exemptions. I would say I don't I think there's only 30 states, if I remember off the top of my head. There's not as many philosophical exemptions as there are definitely religious exemptions, and that's what I was referring to with the Mississippi, them just putting that back in. The other option too is a lot of these mandates are only for public education. Some of the states have it where private education, you don't need that, which I actually think that's a huge disparity. If you're only allowing private people that can afford private care education to have informed consent, to me that's like blaring. I could go on about
Racism,
that. I could go on.
sexism, like
I could go on
everything.
the difference of that. I'm like, when I see those, I'm like, how do you not see this? This is so unfair. But yeah, NBIC is a great resource that you could go to and you could read to see what applies in your state. And I'm very hesitant when people ask me what their state is, because I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So that's why I normally point you to NBIC, because they do a much better job. They have lawyers on staff that will keep all of that updated. I don't have the ability to do that. I would love to do that. I just don't have the ability.
Oh my gosh. I feel just so amazing. I'm like buzzing with excitement and just hell yeah, informed consent. I just feel this feels so good to me. I feel like I'm busting at the seams and like radiating like we can be in control of our choices, and I want that for everybody. I see it and I help cultivate it every single day in births, and you're helping parents do it in terms of that postpartum, but then also you're taking on pharmaceutical devices and adulthood pharmaceuticals. And for me, that is just, it's so honorable. The work that you do is very impressive. And I want you to know that it's such an honor to have you on the show. And thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you feel like people really need to know in order to make an informed decision about things that their family are deciding to do?
I would say if you feel that you do not have the ability to gain informed consent, I'd like you to shake that off right now. I have full confidence that no matter what you do, who you are, where you're from, you have the ability to be informed, and informed consent is a human. I have conversations daily with people from every type of walk of life that have taken the course and talked about how they were able to apply it to their personal situation. I even had this one person who was a server, and he worked at a very busy restaurant, and he was able to provide informed consent to the businessman sitting at his table. And I just love that. I think it's so great that it's not discriminatory at all. Informed consent's for everyone. So I would just encourage you, if you do feel like you're beneath the medical system, or you feel like you need to go to school to be informed, that's not true at all. You can do it. And hopefully the tools that I've created will help you accomplish that for your personal situation.
Oh my gosh, you inspire me so much. This is awesome. Okay, if people wanted to learn more about just the inserts, if they want to follow you on social media, if they were interested in your courses or your guides or getting your books, where can people connect with you and take advantage of all your delicious resources?
Oh, I love that. Delicious resources. I'm going to take that. Justtheinserts.com. Everything's linked at justtheinserts.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X for Just the Inserts. And then I also have Just the Alternatives on Instagram. That is more of my like natural minded crew, or people that are looking for other options. That's only if you want it. You don't have to consume that content if you don't want it. I'm not offended if you don't go. That's why I separated both of those worlds. And then the book is also is you can access it through justtheinserts.com, but if you wanted to order the book, that's justtheinserts.store. You don't have to go exactly there. You can go to justtheinserts.com if that's easier. And that's pretty much it.
Oh my gosh, Alexandra, you were once an anonymous face online, and I could not be more grateful that you are gaining more eyes, that you are being louder about this, that you're really leading the way for parents to make informed decisions without any sort of judgment and with checking your own biases and trying as hard as humanly possible to keep those out of your practice. Those are just things that I admire so much, and it's something that I strive to do. And I really believe that our healthcare system as a whole, as a system, could benefit so much from more attitudes like this. So again, thank you so much for your time. I know you have a busy schedule and a busy family, and I just appreciate you being here, sharing your knowledge and helping us make informed decisions. Thanks for sharing all the education and the resources, and also thanks for not putting it behind a paywall. I appreciate that. And yeah. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. All right, you guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Be sure to follow Just the Inserts on social media, and you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe and at the.birth.lounge. Until next time, head to your app store and download the Birth Lounge app for evidence-based childbirth education and data-driven postpartum support delivered straight to your phone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly do value this community, and I love hanging out with you. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent. It's an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who could use evidence-based information to help them have an informed and confident birth. I'd love to hear what you have to say and read your sweet words. By leaving us a review, you are helping other expectant mamas and their families find the podcast so that we can reduce birth trauma and improve maternity care in the U.S. one birth at a time. If you're interested in joining the Birth Lounge, go to thebirthlounge.com. If you want to connect with me on socials, you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe on all platforms. Until next time, stay educated, stay supported, stay confident. Bye.